replaced it at the courthouse. That generator, that project was about 80,000, but that was just a direct replacement. So obviously you've got, wire and,
Concrete.
you know, concrete and everything else here, so we put that at about 250.
That'd be a steep bid then.
It could be, we could purchase a generator direct and then just go out for bid on the laser side of it.
I don't know if you guys wanna go through 28 or just we stick with 27,
I think we should stick with 27, a lot can change in a year.
right?
I like that we're projecting forward, but
And ideally, I wanted to provide like 28, 29, 30, just again, just for future discussion maybe, and then also, if you have ideas, you're like, hey, I'd really like to see that moved out further, then we can kind of just track that on here as well. One of the other things that, now that we've discussed one department, that if you look below, we kind of have ideas of putting that under the general reserve or the levy or any other type of funding source. So hopefully you'll find that helpful as well, but definitely, the funding sources is up for discussion too, if you desire to do so.
Great, Alexander Building, 7,500 for cameras and 20,000 for a pad, how big a pad and where?
Just looking at putting some, concrete pad in the, back behind the garage doors, cause right now it's just right up to the building, so just put like approaches at the garage doors, at 3 of them back there. And the cameras are basically for more security and, you know, cause lots got, you know, vehicles and trailers and stuff back there.
Any questions on that?
I guess I have a question. Ashley indicated that you're recommending or thinking that some of this might come from reserve. Of course, whatever doesn't come from reserve is gonna come from the levy. What's the thought process on where you position it?
So at the last portion of the report, you will see the grand total. So ideally, in looking at the history of Steele County, the levy was, on the very last page, there's kind of a description or some notes, there. And the levy has generally been staying around like the $2.5 million, level. And so in order to kind of sustain the levy limit, we just looked at what we have available for funds as well as what the levy was and our other funding sources to try to kind of stay consistent, knowing that we want to be conservative.
$2.5 million levy, was that total or just for maintenance?
CIP?
Or CIP only, just
Okay,
CIP,
okay,
yes.
okay.
Sorry, just CIP, all of this is only strictly for CIP.
And do remember that you have a reserves policy, that it's one-time money, cannot be used for operations, cannot be used for repairs. So there was also that process that went into this, that if we felt that a particular expenditure met the criteria for the one-time use policy, then that was maybe identified or flagged as being likely funded through reserves. Anything that's a repair, a replacement, you know, some of that more disposable sorts of expenditures, those are likely to either come from some other funding source if applicable, or more importantly, likely to be coming from the levy.
So what is our unassigned fund balance, or what is our reserve balance as of most current?
Okay, so our current fund balance for general funds is $27,835,826, which is as of May. And then our fund balance for, the CIP specifically is 1.4, a little over 1.4 million. And then of course, I did not bring in highways, just primarily because what we are talking about here is for, it's just
Not
specific.
for,
Yes, yeah, specific to the levy general fund.
Well, the 1.4 is fund balance 38, but fund balance 01, which would typically be your unassigned, that is at 27,000,008. And then we have a reserves base of a minimum of 45%, and we've got a policy that wants to keep it between 45 and 55. So it's basically anything above that 55% mark, or in theory, anything above 45. So overall, you probably have between 7 and 10 million of reserves that could be used, whether it be for your building master plan, which we haven't talked about yet, or year-over-year capital investments, but potentially you've got about 10 million that we can tap into. And historically, we've been tapping in, but then replenishing, tapping in and replenishing. So for example,
That 27 million that you're referencing, is that on here somewhere, or?
No, that's
it's
not on here, because that number is fluctuating, and then at that point, it did not include, I mean, we just took all of our tax payments as well. So, that was just the end of the last year.
Right.
So, that may vary some. With this, but, again, this one, we have between about $7 and $10 million at this point in time. Which is why we looked at about 2.9 in reserve use for the current plan, depending on what direction you guys want.
So when you say 7 to 10 million available, that means that will keep us within that 45 to 55% range?
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think we've been pretty adamant about staying at the 55%, so.
Obviously, we wanna have reserves, it's just like your home, right? You plan for the new roof, you don't just go get a loan the day you wanna put the roof on, so like, we're in a good spot. We also don't wanna over levy and have a huge surplus, so I think that's that balance that we're trying to find.
Absolutely.
Alright, perfect,
Okay.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on the Alexander building? I think that's probably a high number for the concrete.
Depends on how big it's gonna be.
I just figured, about $15 a square foot. Do the math.
It's not too far off. 15 bucks a square foot is kind of
Alright. Annex building,
So this one is, I'll jump in, this one is the bit of a moving target, because we do need to do something minimally to keep the roof from leaking. However, how deep and how far you go with your investment largely depends on what the board is gonna do with its master facilities plan. So we probably put a big asterisk around all of these items to say, we wouldn't expect the board to make any decisions on this until you make your facilities decisions, which you'll be having that conversation again at your next work session. So in 2 weeks, we'll bring the master facilities plan back. But if we were to just simply tie up the roof, keep it from leaking, it would involve some subsurface work. This assumes that we're gonna keep the building in operation for a few years. You're looking at about an $850,000 investment in 27. You'll see that there's some other things in 28 that are also intended to increase the longevity of the structure. And again, if we're not looking for long-term use of that building because of other decisions the board makes with regard to your master facilities plan, some or all of that will no longer be necessary, but we're still gonna have to do some work on the roof. And Jake's been in contact with the contractor who can do some patching and can do some repairs, but it'll come with absolutely no guarantees beyond maybe the useful life of the patch, which is probably about a year or two at most. So that category, we created it for you, put a big star around it, a big asterisk, because there's really no way to make a decision on that until the board decides what it wants to do with its master facilities plan.
anybody want any comments on that?
So we have that meeting coming up in
It'll be, in 2 weeks, it'll be part of your regular work session.
So the 850,000 is just limping along.
Well, so basically that would be a 10-year roof. And we made some assumptions there. Like, I don't know what the insulation is like under there. I don't know what the deck is like. I mean, this thing, it's over 45 years old, and it's been leaking as long as I've been here. There's water coming out of spots that I've never seen water come out of a roof before. So I'm just assuming that there's gonna be some insulation and some deck that needs to be replaced, and, you know, there's some assumptions with that number without actually
I
tearing.
think that's safe to assume too.
Well, I think it's safe to assume that once you start peeling back the layers, there are no guarantees or no bets on what you're gonna find.
We've experienced that in other flat
Oh,
roofs, it's very common, so we'll figure it out.
Is there any way of, look cheaper, looking, has got enough slope to put tin on there or not?
So we actually looked at it, that option, and it was, I forgot what he had quoted me, I know it was the TPO, which was a little bit cheaper, but that carried the 10-year warranty. So it was actually cheaper to go with that TPO roof rather than a metal roof, but you could go, yes. But it wasn't, when he punched the numbers, it wasn't any cheaper.
And that was Schweikert or?
Diverse construction.
Is that who we met on that other building?
Yeah.
Very knowledgeable.
Alright, so we'll put that on hold and we'll move on to the attorney, demo and parking lot, I don't know if there's any questions there. There is?
We might wanna move that into 26, just so we're not carrying winter costs, but a lot of it.
Nice if we could get it done this year.
So if it doesn't get done in 26, then we would propose it for a 27 project.
Well, we wouldn't have to heat it, would we?
We'll have to
Water
keep it-
turn off?
Minimally, but it would be just minimum. I think the water could be shut off.
Okay, or we can turn on there. Building maintenance, like a snow blower broom replacement.
Yeah, we just like to keep the equipment in rotation.
That makes sense. Any questions on that? Courthouse. Courthouse security equipment. That would be,
What do you want to talk about that?
The courthouse Yep, so the courthouse security equipment is a couple of things. One, it's the equipment for extending the front of the building out, so adding a different type of scanner if the one we have isn't adequate. But it's also the keypads and the readers for like the judges' chambers and that kind of thing. So I don't know what the final number is gonna be if we enclose that front alcove. We are definitely looking at those resources. Jake's looking at the cost of just enclosing the structure. Lon's looking at the cost for the electronic upgrades that may be necessary. We have the one scanner right now. I don't know what else we've got or what else we would need to upgrade that area. We were recently made aware of a grant that, it's a 50% match, so it's not gonna cover all of it, and it is a competitive grant. And unfortunately, they only allocated about 4 million statewide. So our piece of that could be very small if you're thinking 87 counties. I don't know that Hennepin or Ramsey would go after it because they would blow that budget right off the bat, but even if it's 80 counties going after 4 million, it's not a whole lot, but we absolutely will be getting an application in to help with that particular project. So the 125 is a placeholder for now. The other two items, I'm gonna refer it back to Jake.
So obviously we'll start with the windows. Windows have been on the CIP, just kind of moving along. They're old, operable windows, you know, we just spent money on the HVAC. So it would be nice, you know, it would be helpful to get the windows replaced to something more efficient. But then also in the courthouse security committee, there's been discussion of also putting some bulletproof glass around some of the judges' areas and whatnot, so. There was 128 windows that are left to replace, because we have to replace some of the HVAC upgrades due to some code issues. And the last 6 that we did, and what was that, 4 years ago already, they were about $4,000 a piece. So I'm figuring about 5,000. So I kinda divided that out over 3 years, and maybe it's longer, but I just had this as a starting point.
some are worse than others, I'm sure.
They're all about the same, I mean, it's just, they're old.
They're operable windows or they're fixed?
Operable.
They're all.
And we would probably start from ground level and work up just from a safety and security perspective.
So the foundation repairs and maintenance, so, we noticed on the north side, the foundation is falling in pretty good.
Steps, right?
Yeah. Basically to the point where, it's bowed in so far that the door, when it closes on that northwest corner, it won't even go into the jam. Like it hits the frame.
To the top of the steps.
So the lower, so when you come in off, I don't know if you've ever come in
Underneath that.
the northwest corner out by the, court administrator office, the door in the basement, it's hitting the frame, not even going into the, but my thought there is we put some money in for a thorough investigation to figure out what's going on, cause there'll probably be some digging and some boring and, you know, just some extensive, cause we just don't wanna say, well, it's the steps that's retaining water or something, and just going. So I'd like to do some investigation and then from there, but my assumption is that the steps are so old and they're cracked that there's moisture getting trapped behind them steps and you're getting, yeah.
Is the grade sloping away or is it something back?
No, that's all pretty good, and that's all concrete
Yeah.
there and that pretty much.
Sloped away?
Yeah.
Not running water back, that's all.
But I just feel, my initial thought is the steps, but obviously before we go and replace those,
You wanna find out for sure what's going on.
So 25,000, is that the engineer allocating or wanting to allocate to an engineer or somebody to
Yeah.
look at it?
Can you get under them steps?
yeah, there's no, they're just all poured.
If it's what you're describing, I don't think $250,000
I
is
don't-
covered
I don't,
next year.
I don't,
So that seems like a low number, if you're talking about those big steps, cause ultimately if the steps are leaking or the problem originated there, the steps gotta come out.
right.
Yeah, that's.
And again, again, that's kind of a placeholder for next year, you know, without knowing, I didn't wanna put $500,000 in there and then, oh, it's a, you know, simple fix or something. But that's why I thought we'd start with the investigation.
I don't know, do we have it in the budget this year to get somebody to look at that this year yet?
Probably not, at least not out of operating funds. And I would question whether or not the investigation would meet our one-time use policy, but we can certainly run numbers a little bit later in the year. But the foundation wall in that corner is visibly bowed, so it will, something needs to happen sooner rather than later.
On the next page, 500,000 for the.
So, and that is to, for the enclosure, to enclose that front area.
So when we're referring to the front, you mean the south entrance?
Southeast corner, so where you got the arches, the intent would be that we would enclose that area, so using the existing footprint, you know, add walls, add framing. I'm not too sure that a design currently exists, but it would literally be pulling that entire security checkpoint out to that space to allow for more movement in and out before you actually get to that main door of the building.
So all those columns are on crossways. They're out
Should
there
be.
now, right?
They're just concrete piers, they don't go all the way
Okay.
through. But it's not,
But you feel between it.
yeah, it's not a big deal,
Okay.
it can be done, it just adds a little more cost.
More room would help then?
It's absolutely necessary, because right now there's no maneuverability whatsoever once you get through the main doors.
Yeah, I'll be having a meeting here with Lon and Stacy to kind of discuss a little bit more about that project. Figure out what everybody's thoughts are on it.
Any more questions on the courthouse? Now we'll move to the detention center.
Mr. Chair, I do have one more question.
Sure.
So the funding sources, the reserves, that law library reserves, is that, Greg, is that the number we have with the law library? For some reason, I thought it was more than 7. We can't squeeze more out of there.
We'll have to call it out, so we tell us the answer.
Maybe the two of us can make that happen. Alright, I just thought it was important. Thank you.
Good question. Detention center, 1.8 million for concrete.
So I'd just like to note that, we have both an asphalt and a concrete, I didn't want to put both projects on there, originally I had it that way. that makes it look inflated. So if you chose to do asphalt, it'd be about $500,000 cheaper than if you chose to do concrete. So we just put the concrete proposal on here and made note in the extra notes on the last page that if you chose to do asphalt versus concrete out there, it'd be about $500,000 less. So just FYI. Did get both, or Jake did get both pricing on those two options.
I think we're happy with the concrete here, am I correct? If we can make it happen, it's gonna be a savings to the taxpayers long term. You don't have that cradle to grave expense with seal coating and everything that goes with asphalt. I would agree that concrete might be the best option.
How about your Dave? Any other questions about the detention center? We'll move on. Fairgrounds, additional cameras, card servicing. Anything on that, Jake?
That shape?
We have two J-Perm. The hard surfacing is largely dependent upon what we get back from the feasibility study and what the final decisions are of the board in conjunction or in collaboration with the fair board in terms of what's parking lot versus what might be through street and that sort of thing. We just know that there needs to be something done, and more likely than not, it will be a 27 project. I think there's a few people, Paul Kurtz in particular, who would love to have seen something this summer, but knowing that we have to work around the fair and everything else, it'll be a 27 project.
I thought it was
Did we not have money in the budget for that?
Yes, that's why it's coming out of reserves, so those dollars will just be carried forward.
But I thought we had about half that.
Yeah, we've been carrying about $1 million the last couple of years, which is about right too.
I thought about that for the public works meeting this morning, where we at on the feasibility study?
Um,
We actually have a meeting again tomorrow.
yeah, we're gonna go do a site visit tomorrow. We've got traffic data, safety data all collected. At this point, I think the goal is for us to go out there and review the site with Scott Kazelka. And then we'll kind of gather some more information from him on more in-depth operations, being that we haven't been able to really model anything at the fair yet. So, but we've got some ideas on improvements we can make there.
You want to add anything to that or not?
One thing that I think you were on that call when you first, when they did the traffic count, results said it wasn't as many cars going through there that we thought it was, so if it were to close down, for example, you're not affecting what we had thought there would be, with the bulk of the traffic being morning and afternoon with the federated people, because it is pretty much all down. During the midday, unless I got an event going on, there's not enough to dictate that, people can't go to the east or people can't go to the west to make up for an alternate route instead of going through there.
We've kind of said in the past, it's a convenience. They find a different way to get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can we get a copy of that, or is it, what format is it?
It's not even in written form. I mean, they've got maps of traffic counts, that's about it right now.
When there's more information available, can you forward it to us?
Sure.
Thank you.
More to come on that. Any other questions about the fairgrounds? We got a really long one before the season.
Sports season.
Every year.
I could have put a couple bot buckets on it too to make that list longer. All right, so door replacement, we have damn near 75 doors in that whole entire facility. So little by little, with the amount of people that go through them, especially the locker room doors, when we've already been doing this, you can only fix them and weld them so much, and they crack out and they rot out from the inside. So, the main facility is over 50 years old, the new arena is over 25 years old. So it's just for us to stay ahead of it, you know, and it's, some of them is total door replacement, some of them is frames, some of them is hinges, door closures, but it's not like we're gonna go and take every single door at once, it's just, we gotta stay ahead of the game. With the elevator, once again, it's, you know, the elevator is over 25 years old, it's just mandated updates that we will have to do, and the biggest ones are the controller and the car, and then all the little things that go with that, so, we got a game plan to do this the next couple of years. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to get done next year, but I think it's something where, I think they gave us till 2029 or 2030 to get it done with. I wanna be proactive on this, because I know this is something that has to get done, you know, for us to keep that, you know, in use, and it's not something where we can't take the elevator out of use, because as much as we use that upstairs, so.
Who works in the elevator, Otis, or?
MEI,
MEI,
they have the contract for, I don't think any of you guys were on, but when that facility was first built, we kinda got suckered in to go with Decent Corp. So I had them, and then the rest of the county had MEI, and then we had a hard time getting out of that contract, but we finally did. So now all the county elevators are serviced through MEI.
So is that, what we're talking about for upgrades, is that the latest code, or is there some new code that just rolled out?
This is everything as of the last 6 months that he had sent me.
I know there was one too that, I don't know if you guys remember when we were, down at Pearl Street. There was a new code that came out, it was like 50 to 60,000, that's probably included in that.
Mhm.
They gave you like 5 or 6 years, but as soon as you were flagged for it, you had to do it. So it's probably better.
And that's kind of where we're at right now. I mean, they came to us and said, okay, this is where you guys are at, you got X amount of years to do this. And
Who flags it, MEI?
We get inspection every year
Yeah.
from the state.
I just wanna make sure we're following those current codes.
Yes.
That's a moving target.
Right.
Elevator companies or state code.
you know,
About the time you make an upgrade, they're gonna say that's not enough, and you shouldn't have done that, you should have waited, so.
Yeah.
As long as we're operating in those current.
The roof on the garage, so if you guys remember when the old nursing home, Cedarview was still up, you know, there was that double star garage, I was with it, that's on the north end of the Four Seasons. Nursing home was tore down, that stayed with the fairgrounds, we utilize that as our shop now for our mower, our skid loader, and our lumber trucks. I need some new roof on it, we can do the work, and when we do it, we'll just throw 2x4s up there and, you know, put a metal roof on and be done with it. That's something we don't have to contract out, obviously we'll have to get a permit and all that stuff through our friends from the city, but, it's just one of those things where a day or two that we can throw that out there ourselves and be done.
So is that just your materials estimate?
Material, yeah, that is, like I said, we can do that between myself and the guys, yeah, that's what they got back for estimate for 2x4s, screws, trim, and then obviously the sheets of metal. Ice edger, if you've ever seen us at the rink, that's something that we push around at the end of the night. It's just a maintenance thing where every 10, 15 years, you know, we get an upgrader one just because of all the use that it takes. We use it every night, sometimes more than once a night, depending on how thick the ice is on the corners. So if you look at the message board and the scoreboard, so the Hockey Association came to me about updating the scoreboards, and what we did with the set that's currently in there is that the Hockey Association took the lead, went out and got, because I worked on it with John Conacher at the time. But what they did is they went out and solicited sponsorships for the scoreboards. Didn't cost the county a penny. The agreement is that youth hockey will go out and get, I think they got 3 or 4 of them already secured. They'll pay for them, get reimbursed through these sponsors.
So these are new sponsors for, okay.
So, it's like some of the sponsors that did the scoreboards before are no longer in business, so. I actually did find the old resolution when we did this back in the early 2000s. So what it says is that, you know, we're accepting a resolution where the scoreboards are given to the arena, and then it's up to the arena to maintain them, and that's what we've done with the other ones. So the 3 scoreboards would be the 2 big ones in the main arena, and then the one in the west arena would be the one on the north side. Then the message board is the board that sits on top of the big one in the main arena. And that one is where, you know, we can put all the different messages, we can put, teams on there, and then we can also get creative and use it as another revenue source and have, advertise and scroll through it, and we have different events. And then we can advertise, you know, different events that we have coming up too, kind of like they do at the one out on the corner that we share with the fair.
So the hockey boosters are paying for that, why is it on the CIP? That's just the installation of it?
No, that's just to show you guys that this is all part of what my plan is up there. Cause you know, when we did the Zamboni, I had to do the same thing. I put that cost of the Zamboni on there, even though we knew we were gonna get half of it paid for from the foundation. It's just to show you guys of what's going into that building.
Was that in the total then, actually?
It is, the other time municipal local, portion of the 35 is just anticipated donations, and we did about half this time, again, it could come in as more, but we did include that, so it is in the total, amount. Designated
Should
for
I
other
try it?
funds. No, you're okay, you might not know what that stands for, anyway, it's not specifically for that, and again, we just did half, because that's kind of, was the practice previous.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I was lucky enough to find all the paperwork, we had done this before, so when it does happen, the resolution is already done, it's just a matter of putting in the new numbers and the new dates. The big one on mine is the metal siding and the recaulking of the facility. So when we did the roof project 2 years ago, if you look on that east side that faces the grandstand, that whole side has got all new metal panels on it. If you go up on the second tier, that's right below the Zamboni room where all our condensing towers are, the dehumidifier, that big area up in there, that was done with metal panels. If you look above the new lobby going straight up, that was done with metal panels. And of all the people that I've had up on that roof over the years to fix these leaks, that was the only solution that has worked. And if we had a really good test, it was the other day. There was that one drop in there. So what I'm looking at doing is that, you know, it's, the west side was painted in 2014, the east side was done in 2023. Well, if you look really close, especially on the west side, it's peeling really, really bad.
Is it cracking too?
Well, the cracks that you see, when we had those looked at a couple of years ago, the engineers all said it's cosmetic cracks, you know. They're more concerned of the rubber caulking that holds the concrete panels together, which we knew that when this facility was built. So what this proposal is going through, pulling that caulking out, recaulking it, and then continuing with that same metal panel to make the whole facility match. Now, to do it everything at once is double than what that 350 is. So my proposal was to do that southwest corner, right north of the Muckle building, and then that whole entire west side. So then that much of it would be done. And then in the next phase would be the stuff on the north side and then the south side of the whole arena. Now, by doing this, you're gonna gain 1.5 inches of R value too, you know, without even insulating, just because you're gonna have that gap in there. But the biggest thing by doing this is it's gonna eliminate us ever repainting this again, because even that stuff that Willie had just done back in 2023 when they were up there, took me up there to show me where a lot of that was already peeling. And I think the only way to do this right, if we were to go the painting route, is to have somebody go in there and sandblast it all the way down. I'm not a fan of power washing and painting over the top of it, because it just, I mean, we saw what it did to the East Arena.
That's not even a fix. You're painting masonry product, that's
Correct.
It's,
You know,
there's water and moisture coming out of that masonry. You want it. So if you're sealing it in there, you're looking for trouble.
yeah. So, and by having Swickerts do it, you know, they're already part of that Omni contract that, you know, did the work for us, so,
What's the warranty on paint on that metal?
God, it's gotta be 20, 30 years or so. I guess we really never, or I have never really asked about that.
It'll have to be painted sometime.
I would imagine that carries a 30-year at least.
So they caulk where the pan, they're tip-up panels.
Correct.
So they caulk between those tip-ups, it's time to remove that.
Yes,
So we're gonna cover it, you're gonna caulk it and cover it with tin.
just like we did with the other sides.
So what happens when the caulk fails behind you, do I have to worry about it?
They claim that once this is done, there's really no way moisture's gonna get in there, because you're sealed up on top and then you're sealed, you know, with the seal from it.
Yeah, I guess I'm kinda thinking along the lines of Mr. Glenn, you know, what's the warranty?
Mm-hmm.
That's a big cost,
Right.
but if it's gonna carry us out 30 years, it might make the most sense.
A lot of old barns, they have 50-year paint warranty. You don't need to,
On the tin?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
that's what this is, right?
And this
I
stuff
thought you were
is,
asking on the-
it's pretty thick. I bet you this stuff is either 10 or 12 gauge. I mean, it's not the stuff you would get on Menards. I mean, I got a sample of it in my office, and I kind of see this as the same way he viewed the parking lot deal, you know, an asphalt versus a concrete, where the asphalt stuff, you're gonna be dealing with that down the road. I mean, I think this is a solution where if we paint it, we know we're gonna have to do it again, you know?
So we do the west rink and then push the east rink out further.
Yeah.
What did it cost us to paint it?
Yeah, and glad you brought that up, because I had to find this. So when Kevin Oil did the west rink, now remember, that was never ever painted at all, that was just concrete. He did that back in 2014, and that was $42,700. But he went and sandblasted that concrete. When Willie painted it back in 23, he was at $99,100.
Is the east rink a lot bigger though, or not?
The thing with the west rink is you get that great big side, and then everything chops up. Now, if you look at the east rink, like on the south side, we would only come down to where those corrugated concrete pieces are. We won't come all the way down to the ground because it won't look right. So when you go up there and you see where the corrugated, it's about, I don't know, 10, 12 feet from the ground up is where it would stop. You know, then you got the square colored, regular concrete stuff, and then above that is where the corrugated painted stuff is, and that's what we would,
So it's probably not a whole lot different.
no.
Yeah, if we're at $100,000 in the Tampa paint, just round it up, that's probably what's gonna be next time. And you get 10 years out of it, if you're lucky. You're getting 30, 40 years out of it, that will minimum. You gotta do the math, but
It might have been better off if it was never painted, right?
generally. Yeah, we're gonna have to do a little more info on the metal.
So it looks like the metal is a 35-year warranty. And then they got some standards, because they, the way I'm reading it, you know, they say over 35 years, it's gonna go down to a grade 8 or a fade 8, and
It's not bumper to bumper for.
right, it's not like the roof where it's bumper to bumper, it's
They'd appreciate it.
It's limited. And then with the cameras, you know, we have 9 cameras in there right now. They're outdated, they gotta get, we need to update those, and then we know we got spots, our blind spots that we need more coverage in. Now, one thing with this is, I'm working with Kristen and Amber, because being at the Four Seasons is the site of the mass dispersing if some major catastrophe, whatever happened. You know, we're looking to see if there's grant money out there to help us with this, you know. So,
Them are for security, or them are for the viewing and games, or?
these are more for security. We got, when we started looking at this in depth, you know, there were quite a few spots that aren't covered. I mean, it's by nobody's fault, it's just, you know, how secure do you want that facility to be, you know, and then, you know, you got the basement, you got all these different hallways, you got the blind spots in different corners of the lobby areas, you know, it's like I said, we have a general view of 9 different cameras right now. But what we've learned over the years, when stuff has happened, it's like, well, if we would have had a camera, we would have been able to catch it, you know, it's kinda like with the cameras on the outside parking lot too, you know, there's spots out there that are blind spots that are not 100% able to get picked up, so.
Isn't the Fair Board putting in more cameras too?
They put more in, but there are still, I mean, it's at least once a year where somebody will say that they were up for a hockey game and, you know, something broke on their car, or they got backed into, or window got broke and got something stolen, and they asked, well, do you have a camera? It's like, well, yeah, we got cameras, but unfortunately, where do you parked?
So this is 9 to replace the existing cameras or add 9?
This is to exist what we have, and then to add a whole bunch of other nodes, but basically, all these, other than maybe 4 or 5 would be inside, and then the ones that would be on the outside would be attached to the Four Seasons building, like right above our main entrances.
So I feel like I ask this question all the time with security type stuff, so how does our insurance company look at that? Because I know in my personal life and some of the stuff that I have, where we have cameras, our insurance gives us a discount because of it.
MCIT gives us no discounts whatsoever. However, if there is vandalism or the opportunity to seek recovery through restitution or otherwise, if it was something that occurred because of somebody's negligence or whatever, the camera feed provides us with evidence. But unfortunately, MCIT does not give us any kind of discount whatsoever. So all of the cameras that you'll see in and throughout the CIP are intended to improve the safety and security for the occupants when they're monitored, otherwise they're evidence of what's gone on in a way of either trying to track down the offender or find a responsible party if it's other than just normal wear and tear, weather or otherwise.
All right, it's 3:47, so we got a few minutes to go through IT, park and rec and whatnot, so. Dave, any more questions on the Four Seasons? Dave, you're up.
Okay. On the camera replacements, pretty much the discussion we just had, and what we're basically setting up is a forward-looking, just working with the oldest of the cameras and having a fund so that we can take care of and replace some of the oldest of the things.
How come your budget's 12,000 and his is 56?
Because we're spreading this out over a long period of time, and it's just the oldest of the cameras.
I figured about that.
Yep, well, because I'm really, really good at that stuff, so.
And Public Works would be new cameras, so if you just jump down, there's 20,000 in the budget there, because we have several major blind spots out there.
We do. And pretty much the same thing that he just described is when we built that building, we weren't in the situation we're in today where people are attacking public buildings. And so we need to have that evidence, both for safety, but as well as that evidence, and to determine. The copier replacement, maintaining a program is just adjusted for some of the inflation that we dealt with. And we're basically just keeping these things, we run a 7-year refresh cycle on copiers. We don't necessarily replace them at the 7 years if for some reason, we just don't see the good value, in doing that. But that's it, we just wanna make sure that we continue to have the funds to be able to keep the current stuff in. Firewall upgrades, there's a number of firewalls, by using dark fiber, we've consolidated to a lesser number of firewalls that are required, but we still do have multiple ones that have to be covered. We purchase them, we get hardware and 3 years of software on it, and then at that 3-year point, we're evaluating, do we need to replace, do we need to, just renew the license on that software. And so that's why it's broken out there, this is the primary ones at this location this year. And in the next year, just not trying to jump too far ahead on that, but that next year is less because it's a different type of firewall. That one covers, the CJIS departments. The Nova 4 renewal, this is basically just making sure that we've got the funds that are available in place. This is our security awareness training, that's a part of it. The official alert system that allows us to track and determine whether something's a threat, and we added Defend, you've seen that one pop in recently. And then we're also using it for compliance training as well. So it's a number of different modules within Nova 4. That stuff's gonna be changing a little bit, because as we move users around between Mid Prairie and the county, that stuff will pop up, we're increasing user count, so. Skimming the switch replacements, that's just, again, aging equipment, making sure that you've got that constantly moving forward. The virtual host, this is actually our virtualization environment, VMware that we use. This is what runs all of the servers. We actually have, on the Steele County side alone, we have 3 separate virtualization environments. This one, jail, and the inside the jail. We're looking at the potential of combining the 2 data centers out there, maybe save some money on that, but this basically covers it as is on that. And the second piece of that, the VRTX server replacement, that's actually additional hosts that are specific to what we're using for the CJIS departments. And it's also located out at the jail. It's just that equipment's end of life, and the requirement is that we have to have supported equipment for CJIS.
Thank you, Dave. Parks and Rec, you wanna go through that? Nothing for 27. Public Works Building, $20,000 for additional cameras we went through. Road and Bridge, Jake, you're up.
So most of these are pretty much just, existing pieces of equipment that are on rotation, similar to what we talked to before, with other categories. So yeah, these are all pretty much just existing pieces of equipment that have reached their life cycle and we're looking to replace them.
And as we talked about this morning at the Public Works Policy Committee, Paul has continued Kevin's program of looking at capital replacement over roughly a 10 to 15 year cycle to try to keep the investment roughly flat year over year. Paul has taken a slightly different approach in that he's gone through storage and said, we don't need this, we don't need that. So he has been selling off and reinvesting those dollars in other pieces of equipment as he goes along. And you'll see that he's also anticipating a trade-in value to offset the impact to the levy for this type of equipment. And Ashley did pull the historical numbers, I believe that's part of your summary, that year over year, it's been about $775,000 a year for capital replacements for highways, so we're right in that ballpark, actually a little less for 27.
All right, so then we have encrypted radios for the sheriff. And then we got keynotes and summary, and I don't know if she's gonna take care of that. Ashley, or?
Again, we kind of already touched base on this, just gives you the total amount of anticipated expenditures. It talks about the $500,000 difference if we went with asphalt versus concrete. Also explains the road and bridge, and then just to give you just a quick reference, what the actual cost breakdown is per fund. So general fund reserves, just about 2.9 million, highway reserves 2 million, excuse me. Law library 70,000, the levy 2.495, other funding and donations is 35,000, and trade is about 37 to come up with the total amount. Just to try to make it easy to reference based because the way the report is laid out. for you guys, and the one thing, I guess, if you want to, I would be interested if you guys have any thoughts, additional questions, comments, see any priorities that maybe we didn't have, and
Do
then.
we wanna go through landfill quick, or is that?
Oh, yeah, sorry, no, please, I apologize. And then, yeah, leave that so we can bring back later a little bit better assumption. But going through the landfill, again, just a contract to continue replacing their equipment, similar to the highway department. Maybe propose putting fiber lines, so I think this getting Kevin Lightning is a great example of why that would be beneficial for
We
them.
didn't do that on purpose though, just so you know.
Working on the final closure of C3, expenditures, installation of the flare, landfill, expansion for maybe a marine acquisition, if it comes up and available, and then, again, replacing the semi-tanker and trailer with specific questions. Jake or Jay.
Well, and more importantly, landfill's an enterprise fund, so none of this is levy-based, and Ron worked with Josh to put together a long-term cash flow analysis for landfill as part of their levy setting process. So the closure is anticipated as well as the expansion cell in 2030, so they plugged in when we would see that major growth. We're not gonna have the same kinds of significant expenditures like we did in 26. 26 is kind of the last of the biggies, because we had to completely redo that entire cell and get it lined. But their cash flow plans now align with what they feel to be likely their expansion and maintenance costs. There is money set aside for closure. I don't know if the 2.1 is part of that or not, but either way, they do have reserves to cover it.
Well, they've set themselves up for the following years.
So they made rate proposals for the next 3 years, so that the haulers know big jump for 27, smaller jumps for 28 and 29. And then ultimately, based on the projections that they have, it looks like by investing in maintenance, we might be able to defer some of the other larger expenditures.
I realize that's not part of this program, but has that Christmas Eve date been discussed out there yet?
Yes, and a decision was made that they'll be open for half day on Christmas Eve. Going forward with how the Christmas Eve holiday falls into the weekend, it'll be less of an issue for a couple of years, and then they'll have to revisit it.
Okay.
But they did put out a full holiday schedule for the fall, so that the haulers that were most concerned have that to plan
They were all
around.
more concerned about that than they were about the rate increases.
Yep, so the new contracts are going out, and so right now, we don't know how many will re-up. But based on the lack of complaints, we do suspect that our larger haulers will likely continue to re-up. So again, this was not meant for decisions today, but meant to give you things to think about. We'll be talking about your facilities master plan in 2 weeks. The CIP will be impacted by that in some respects, because some things might be deferred, some things might be combined. But if there's things that you want any additional information, let Ashley or me know, and we'll make sure we get that out to you. But ultimately, we're looking to have general direction from the board, so that when we begin building the budgets for 27, that we're layering in the CIP pieces along with the operating.
2 minutes to the work session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley, for the SNEAC.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I was like, I was there.
You were
I was like, am I early or late?